by the previous government, whether it is still considered necessary by the current government.
The Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr Chair, I understand that both of the previous speakers, neither of them have sat on the Justice Electoral Select Committee, which actually heard this matter. Oh, Law and Order Select Committee, thank you. Thank you, Mr Chevelle, very good. However, I do presume that they have read the Juries Act, since they are commenting on it. So the Juries Act currently allows people aged 65 years and over to be excused on written application each time they are summoned on the basis of their age. Now, they are currently able to do that, so it's difficult for me to comprehend why, in fact, saying to people, if you feel that you don't want to serve or you can't, you don't feel that you can, then you have to write in every single time you're summoned. Now, I can tell the House that I've had a family member now deceased who, after the age of 65, I think it was probably about 68, started to, in fact, be affected by a particular motor neuron disorder. And in her case, it didn't stop her being able to think. She could think excellently, she could do all sorts of things brilliantly, but she felt that every time she was summoned, and she was summoned an awful lot, she needed to get me to write in for her to advise why she couldn't come in. Now, she was never going to get better from this motor neuron disorder. She was never going to be able to be any more able to cope with that. It's a dreadful, dreadful thing. But then again, she didn't want to have to write in every single time and do it. No, she did. She wanted to be able to say. She didn't want to actually have to talk about. I'm sorry that Mr Mallard thinks it's so disgusting for me to speak about a member of my family now deceased. But actually, that is the sort of behaviour that brings this Parliament into disrepute. It's absolutely disgraceful. That is absolutely disgraceful. But instead, this family member of mine did not want to have to tell people she did not know all about her medical situation. She wanted to be able to say, I've done my service, I don't want to have to keep going. And so Mr Mallard is just, it's just appalling, isn't it, really? But however, I took note of David Clendon's comments during the first reading, when he commented, the second reading rather, when he commented that to have this permanent excusal in there in place all the time might be unfair to someone who felt that they couldn't contribute, and then they found that they could and they felt able to. So in my SOP, to which I presume that the Labour opposition has read, since they've been commenting so much on this issue, that they will note that I have taken up the Greens' suggestion of actually enabling someone to say, I don't feel that I need to be in that situation now, I can now cope with this, and I do want to be now back into the list. The fact is that the Ministry of Justice receives thousands of applications every year from people aged 65 and over who don't want to be called again, summoned again to be a juror, and they believe, and I believe that they're right, that actually people who are 65 years and over who have contributed to their community, if they feel that they have done their time, that they should be able to say so. But do they have to do it every single time they get summoned? And I think they should be able to say, actually, it's not for me. At a later date, if they change their mind, I think they should be able to come in. And I think the Greens made a very good point, and I took it up, and it's in the SOP. So I would like to thank David Clendon for his helpful suggestion. So there's no ageism about this. This is about people's ability but to feel that they can contribute, but also giving them options around it. And I think that's sensible, and it actually means that people aren't necessarily going to feel humiliated, that they can actually say, I don't have to keep writing in every single time I get summoned. Because I can tell the House that there are some people who are summoned a lot to go and do jury service, and many of these people, because they're not actually listed as having occupations like Member of Parliament, police officer, lawyer, dentist, all these many occupations that are currently excluded from having to do jury service, they get called all the time. And I actually think when you're over 65, if you think you've done your time, you should be able to say so. But I don't think that's ageism. I think that's actually accepting that some people have already contributed an awful lot to society. So I don't understand why it is that the Labour opposition is so worried about. They certainly weren't worried about it in the Select Committee, and I can only think that they've been influenced by some very malevolent forces.
I'm going to call Dennis O'Rourke.
Chairman, New Zealand First does